Is the LG Stylo 6 worth buying in 2021? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Hey everybody, this is Andre here covering for Kevin on the Kevin Breeze channel, and in this video, we're going to be looking at the LG Stylo 6. Now this is the unlocked version of the phone, but you can also get it through carriers. For more information on availability and pricing, be sure to check the link in the description below. This phone was released in May of 2020, but is it still a good value today? Let's find out. So this phone has a 6.8-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p and a PPI of 395. The phone has a 20.5 by 9 aspect ratio and an 82.5% screen to body ratio. Overall, the bezels are pretty small and it gives the phone a pretty sleek appearance. There's a water drop here for the front-facing camera, and personally, I'm not a very big fan of the water drop. I think the hole punch looks a lot better. And since the bezels are small and the phone looks pretty sleek as well, I think that the hole punch camera would definitely add to the look and make it look even more modern and give it a more timeless design. That being said, this front-facing camera is 13 megapixels, which is pretty powerful, so that is definitely a plus. The phone has 64 gigabytes of internal storage with micro SD card expansion, which is pretty decent. I typically like to say 64 gigabytes would be a good minimum, especially since iPhones, which are a lot more expensive than this phone, start at 64 gigabytes as well. And with micro SD card expansion, this one can actually have a larger storage capacity than an iPhone, which is pretty impressive in my opinion. To give you an idea of what this looks like, right now I have everything that I use on a daily basis downloaded onto this phone, and it's taking up 37% of the internal storage. Now this is definitely a good amount of storage still available, especially since a lot of phones in this price bracket start out at 32 gigabytes instead of 64. So you really have those phones full internal storage and more available after downloading the basic necessities. So you have all that space for other apps and media. Now if you need more space for media, you can always expand the storage with a micro SD card, but I personally prefer to just use the internal storage. So honestly, I wish that it was 128 gigabytes instead of 64, but again, 64 is a good starting point. Now there's no wireless charging with this phone, but there is a fingerprint scanner. Let's go ahead and give that a try now. There we go, let's try it one more time. As you can see, the fingerprint scanner is very fast and responsive. There's no face unlock on this phone, unfortunately. That's a bit of a disappointment to me because that's a feature that I use often, but at the same time, having a reliable fingerprint scanner is still very convenient. Taking a look at the camera setup, we do have a triple camera setup here. There's a 13 megapixel rear camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide, and a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera. So this is definitely a pretty decent quality camera. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. This is the normal camera mode, of course. And you can go into portrait mode here. And then ultra wide is accessed with this button right in the middle. This is the front facing camera, of course, and you can also access portrait mode on here too. The picture on here is pretty decent, but if you're using it for serious content creation, you might be a little disappointed because the quality isn't that high and the image really isn't very crisp. Especially in the portrait mode, as you can see, it does work and you can control the blur, but it doesn't look as professional as a higher end camera. Just doing a quick test of the video mode of the phone. We are shooting in 1080p right now. Also keep in mind the audio quality. As you can see, that was the video mode of the phone. The phone's able to shoot video in quality up to 1080p, which personally I think it's a little bit of a disappointment because for just a small amount more, you can get a phone that can shoot in 4K. And if you're using the phone for content creation and need to shoot actual videos, then 4K is really nice to have. One thing I really do like about this phone's video playback is the audio quality. As I turned up the volume, it didn't really get distorted. A lot of entry-level and mid-range phones do have a little bit of distortion on the audio when you turn it up all the way, but this one really didn't. It sounded crisp and clear the whole time, and I really like that. Of course, if you use headphones or speakers, then it doesn't really matter, but I personally use the phone speaker a lot when I'm consuming content, so it's really nice when the phone's audio quality itself is good. One thing I also do like about this phone is the fact that it not only shoots in 1080p, but the display is also in 1080p, so it's not going to be limited. You're going to be able to see the videos in the quality you shoot it in. A lot of the phones that are more entry level, a little bit below and a little bit above the range of this phone, do have a display of 720p instead. And that's always a little bit disappointing when you can shoot in 1080p, but you can't actually view it in the same quality. You're limited to 720p. Luckily, with the 1080p display on this phone, you're able to not only shoot video in 1080p, but you can also view it in the same quality. So you're not going to have an issue with that there. Now, internally, we're getting 4 gigabytes of RAM with the MediaTek Helio P35 processor. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. So this particular device in my hand is the unlocked version of the phone. Now, the version you get through a carrier is actually 3 gigabytes of RAM instead of 4, which is a little weird. I don't know why they did that, but for some reason, there is that difference, so you might notice a difference in performance as well. I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone. It has a single core score of 170 and a multi-core score of 964. So really not bad as far as performance specs go. I would say this phone is really in that weird range between entry level and mid-range, where if you're using your phone for basic activities, you're definitely going to have a more enjoyable experience with this phone than you would with a more entry level phone. But at the same time, once you get into the realm of more high performance devices, you're really going to run into some walls as far as the performance goes, and you might not be able to do as much. And then for a little bit more, you can get phones that are a little bit of a step up as far as features and performance go, like the Motorola Moto G Stylus and the Samsung Galaxy A31 all have a little bit more power than this phone as far as performance and features go. But at the same time, those do cost a little bit more as well. Now, this phone has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which is really good. You're going to get some good power and longevity out of that. And now that we've gone over some of the specs of the phone, let's take a look at the hardware. So up top here, we have the noise canceling microphone, as you can see right here. And then our earpiece, as well as the front facing camera right under it. Then at the bottom, there's a 3.5mm headphone jack, the microphone, USB-C charging port, and the speaker, as well as, of course, the stylus. What would an LG Stylo be without a stylus, right? I really like this stylus. It's really convenient to get to and really easy to use. You don't see any lag there. On the left side of the phone, we have our volume up button, volume down button, the Google Assistant button, and the slot for the SIM card and the micro SD card. On the right side of the phone, there's the power button. And then on the back, we have our camera setup, our flash, and the fingerprint scanner. Also towards the bottom in the middle, there's an LG logo right here. Overall, the phone is on the thicker side. It feels really sturdy and has a good weight to it. The materials feel high-end, and it definitely doesn't feel like a cheap phone. In fact, it feels like a lot more higher-end phone than it actually is. As mentioned before, I really think the design is more modern and timeless, and I don't think it's going to really look like an old phone after a few years. The back is made of a glossy material, and surprisingly, the fingerprints really don't show up on it, which is definitely a plus. And now let's take a look at what's inside the box. So in here we have a quick start guide, there's a wall adapter, and a USB-C charging cable, of course. Almost didn't even see this here. There is a SIM card removal tool inside the same packet as the quick start guide. Definitely don't want to miss that. So in conclusion, is this phone worth buying in 2021? Personally, I think this phone is great. The design is really nice, and as I said before, it's really timeless. Even after a few years, I really don't think this is going to be looking like an old phone at all. And as far as the features goes, it definitely has a decent amount of good features that you would expect on any smartphone these days. The only things I'm really not a big fan of on this phone are, first of all, the processing power. It's right in the middle between entry level and mid-range. You're not going to be able to do a whole lot on this phone as far as content creation goes. Photo editing should be okay, but video editing and then things like gaming are definitely going to run into some problems because this processor, while it's better than the average entry-level phone, it's not quite in the realm of high performance. So if you're looking for a higher performance device, I would definitely suggest looking into phones that are a little bit above this one, something like the Samsung Galaxy A31 or the Moto G Stylus, for example, or even maybe one of the older flagship phones around a similar price range to this. But if you really only use this phone for basic activities like making calls, sending text messages, that sort of thing, and also want the option to do a little bit more like some photo editing, more heavy content consumption, and some light gaming, then this phone will definitely get the job done, and I think that it's a great value. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.